Research is showing how just your feet, without all the bells and whistles, can do a better job. But barefoot is not always appropriate. That's why I developed Xero Shoes, original barefoot wear.
And value your business at 25 times profit.
That's correct.
But here's the other problem I've got. If this category is growing as fast as you say,
Right.
it's going to attract some very big competitors at some point.
Yeah.
And we'll look down at this and say, piece of rubber, piece of string.
Right.
I can do the same thing and put my distribution power behind it and crush these cockroaches.
Today on the Real Business Roundtable, we're thrilled to welcome Steven Sashen, the visionary founder of Xero Shoes. Steven's journey is one of resilience, innovation, and incredible success, from his unforgettable appearance on Shark Tank to building Xero Shoes into a globally recognized brand.
I wanted to say congratulations, you're our official first like real official guest.
I don't know
guest on the show.
I don't know if that, we have some plans for we have some plans for other people, but I appreciate you taking some time to come and sit down with us. I know me and you have had conversations, many times, and I thought, you have a really cool story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just because of just your entrepreneurial journey, building a shoe brand, I felt that having you on the show was more than appropriate, and we'd love to hear kind of your story, the grind, the entrepreneurship journey.
I want to go way, way back first, real quick, and talk about, is it true that you were actually a stand-up comedian before you started Xero Shoes?
Yes.
Wow.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Okay, before I started Xero Shoes, I was a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, you want more than that? Gads, I don't know what to say. So there was a gap in between. I started doing stand-up in 1983, and basically kind of stopped in 1993, and then moved to Boulder, Colorado, and ironically ended up getting cast in a. Do you remember Car Talk on the radio?
I think
Click and clack.
so. I think so. I'm going to be 45 in January. I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I was going to say you should be old. Anyway, it was these two guys, from Boston. They answered questions about car stuff on TV. Well, there was a TV version that I was part of that was like for computers. It was called Disc Doctors. So I stopped doing stand up, and then I got cast in this comedy computer show, and then. A bunch of other stuff, blah, blah, blah. Ended up kind of happily retired for a while. And then Xero Shoes happened as a complete fluke and at the against the wishes of my wife. That's the shortest version of the story.
So we've kind of talked about it a little bit. I want to kind of get into what inspired you to start Xero Shoes. Like, how did you all of a sudden come up with, how did you get involved if it was already started? I kind of want to get into that early beginnings kind of.
Okay, so again, it was a complete accident, and it was something that I'd never planned whatsoever. So what happened was, I got to do math and then feel really old when I do it. So 17 years ago, I'm 45 years old. I got back into sprinting after a 30-year break, and I spent the next 2 years getting injured pretty much constantly. I mean, like one day I'm hobbling through the kitchen, and my wife, literally curious, says, "Are you having a good time?" I went, "Oh my God, I'm having a great time, except I'm getting injured all the time." But just, getting back into something that I did when I was in high school was really fun. Yeah. So anyway, after 2 years of nonstop injuries, a friend of mine who's a world champion runner, which in Boulder, Colorado is another way of saying my neighbor, because they're everywhere. I mean, I'm literally, out of all the people I train with, I'm the only one who doesn't have a world championship title. So this guy said, yeah, it's a little intimidating. So this guy says, why don't you try running barefoot and see if you learn anything? Now, I'm not telling people to run barefoot, but what it is when you run barefoot, good form feels good, bad form hurts. And I had some bad form that I couldn't feel in a regular shoe. And I could tell because I ended up with a giant blister on the ball of my left foot. And I've learned that most people in that situation go, "Oh, see, this bullshit. I got a blister." I, for whatever reason, went, "How come my right foot is fine?" So I was curious about that. So a week later, I'm going for my second barefoot run. I've still got this gaping hole on the ball of my left foot. And I'm thinking, if I can find a way to run that doesn't hurt, then maybe I won't be doing the thing that caused the giant gaping hole in my foot to begin with. So I kept paying attention to my right leg as I was running, just wondering if I could figure out what it was doing differently than my left leg. I never figured it out consciously, but at the 9-minute and 30-second mark, after 9 minutes and 29 seconds of agony, everything changed. And my running instantly got faster, easier, lighter, more enjoyable. And I just stuck with it. What happened in reality was that I was doing a thing called overstriding. So I was landing with my left foot further in front of my body than it should have been. And because I'm a sprinter,
you to land on the ball of your foot.
Well, you could land on your heel and overstride, but as a sprinter, you're supposed to land on the ball of your foot. So I was pointing my toes, landing on the ball of my foot, puts a whole bunch of friction on there, blister. And that stopped. So my injuries went away. I became faster. Cutting to the end of the story, for the last 15 years, I've been one of the fastest guys in America in my age group, in 100 meters outdoor, 60 meter indoor. But backing up, I wanted that barefoot-like experience, but I wanted to not have to argue with people in restaurants about whether it was legal to be in there in bare feet. It is, by the way. They can have a policy, but it's not illegal. And my wife also was getting tired of me walking into our white carpeted house with my dirty ass bare feet. So, that was the inspiration to do something. So the first thing I did is just did a bunch of research and found some rubber from a shoe repair place, found some cord at Home Depot, and made a sandal based on a 10,000-year-old design. And then people said, hey, I want some of those. And so I made 50 pairs of those for various people. And then one day, the end of the story is coming up soon, I promise you. Then one day, this guy who's writing a book on barefoot running said, if you had a website for this weird sandal making hobby of yours, I'd put you in the book. Well, I've been an internet marketer since 1992. I built literally 400 or 500 websites at that point. So I rush home. I pitch this incredible opportunity to my wife, who assures me it's a stupid idea that won't make any money and is a waste of time. And
that's how it always starts.
Yeah. And she insisted, do not build that website. And I told her that I wouldn't, and then she went to bed and I did.
Yeah. So from weird sandal making hobby to what you guys are doing now, which is just I don't know if it's public, but just numbers.
Yeah, I'll give you the public. I'll give you the public numbers.
Yeah.
So, hey, first of all, what we started selling was a do-it-yourself sandal making kit, and now we have 60 styles of casual and performance shoes, boots, and sandals that people use for everything from taking a walk to running ultramarathons to playing in the NBA and WNBA. We have a basketball shoe that's coming out in the spring that professional ball players are playing. And I can give you these numbers publicly because they're published publicly. In 2023, we did just shy of $65 million.
Congratulations. Wow. That is awesome.
It's pretty wacky. Who knew? I mean, we didn't plan this. Frankly, look, I got to be honest, I'll be totally candid because that's the way I am. We thought we were going to sell this thing once we got to $1 million, and people were like, no, that's not a business. And then we thought, okay, maybe at 5, and people would say, no, wait till you get to 10 and then we'll talk. Then we got to 10 and they moved the goalpost to 20. We get to 20, they moved the goalpost to 40. We get to 40, they moved the goalpost to 60. Yeah. I mean, it's been, we've literally, and not that we just wanted to bail, because we're really committed to what we're doing, but we just knew that there are smarter people than us in the various things that we are doing. And, we want to do the right thing for the brand by getting it to those people who can really maximize the value to customers.
I want to get to that in a little bit. I think
Sure.
you know what we're going to talk about. But so you're saying you built this company against conglomerates, against huge companies. I mean, what what did that entail? Because honestly, you've done a great job of it. And you're talking about going against, obviously you're in a little bit of a different niche, but you're going against massive companies who just own the world.
Oh, yeah. Well, to be clear, for quite a long time, they just ignored us because who cares? Now, very early on, though, we heard from executives at major footwear brands saying, oh, yeah, this natural movement thing you're doing, totally legit. But we can't do it because if we did, we'd be admitting we've been lying. I mean, that's what they literally said.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But again, we're a tiny little thing. I mean, Nike's a $50 billion company. Our first year in business, we did $50,000. So, who's going to give a shit?
Yeah.
But that has changed, I will admit. In fact, even people who have invested in our company, we have a private equity partner, and every time we'd have meetings, I'd comment about, getting into basketball, and they thought I had my head completely up my butt. And that it was totally impossible. Well, as that project was progressing, I got a call from the agent of a handful of players, and he said, what are you up to? And I described it. And I said to him, the moment we have one of your athletes playing on the court in our shoe, we're going to hear about it from Nike.
Oh,
and he
for
said,
sure.
Oh, well, I'm calling you because Nike called me last week to find out what you're up to. Oh, shit.
That's great. Yeah. Okay.
So that was interesting. Nothing's happened with that yet, but I've met, the CEOs and presidents and VPs of every major footwear brand. It's the same thing. Now they're paying attention to us. So for a while, the only thing that we did and it's what we still do, is we make sure we don't make any claims, any medical claims, any scientific claims, any performance claims that isn't backed up by research with our shoes. Because we've seen in this industry, that's the kind of thing that gets you sued. It's not like the FTC is going to come after you, because everyone in this space is way too small for that. But the competition, if you give them a reason to, they will come after you. They'll file a suit. They'll have someone stage a class action lawsuit. So we are hyper cautious about how we talk about what we do. Meanwhile, we watch a bunch of tinier companies just say a whole bunch of crap that they're not legally allowed to say. But we're protecting a brand. So not sure if that totally answers your question. I mean, I'll say it this way. The biggest thing we did when it comes to the bigger companies is, up until very recently, kind of ignore them the way they ignored us, and then say bad things about them in public. Fundamentally, we believe, and it's not just because it's a belief, it's because the science and the research and the evidence shows it, what they're doing is causing problems. And and lying about it, frankly. And I don't think that's okay. I think it's morally repugnant to make money by lying to your customers.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on getting into basketball shoes, which is something you guys haven't done before, getting into sports. I think that is what is going to kind of take you from the barefoot shoe into something that is going to directly compete with these big companies, obviously, because Jordan, I mean, they're a massive shoe, right? They were built off of a basketball player, as everyone knows. Yeah. Getting into that and having a successful launch with a basketball shoe, that could be kind of, game changing for Xero Shoes. Oh,
absolutely. And it happened not because we decided to do it. It happened because a WNBA player reached out to me in 2018 and said, I've been wearing your shoes and your sandals off the court, and my feet and ankles have become indestructible. You should make a basketball shoe. Well, it just so happened a little while earlier, I had been at some biomechanics event, and I was wearing one of our boots, and there was a guy there who was a strength and conditioning coach for a college basketball team. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, that's just like, a Chuck Taylor, Converse All-Star, but, slightly more built up, because it was a hiking boot. Well, I brought that home and I handed it to our chief product officer, who'd previously worked for Converse and many other companies. So we took that hiking boot, stripped it down into something that approximated like a Chuck Taylor, and gave that to a handful of players who really, really liked it. Well, we gave it to this WNBA player, the one who reached out to us, and she said, it doesn't quite fit me, so I can't play in it, but I can tell you this, I couldn't sprain my ankle in this thing if you paid me to.
Interesting.
Now, I kept trying to push to make this project happen, but we were a small company, and it's an expensive thing to develop anything new, let alone something where, again, at that time we were maybe a $10 million company. It's like, you think you can get to the NBA? Now, I would say, well, yeah, I totally think that, but it was crazy because I was naive and stupid, which is how things get done.
You need a little bit of crazy. Exactly. Yeah.
You need a lot of bit of crazy. Yeah. Well, so a couple of years ago, though, we started hearing trainers from big teams, from the Clippers, from the Nuggets, from the Heat, like big teams saying, this whole barefoot thing is really important. We've got players who are wearing your stuff off the court. What if you made a basketball shoe? And then we started hearing it from players as well. And so we fast-tracked that program and worked with a number of NBA and WNBA players. And we also have people on our team who are lifelong ballers, and built something, took it to the All-Star game last year before we released it to anybody, and people went crazy over it. And then we gave the prototypes to Justin Holiday. He was with the Nuggets in the playoffs last year, to this woman, Tammy Fig-Bentley, who's the center for the Indiana Fever. We said, this is just a prototype. So just, so you get a feel for what we're doing. And the next thing we know, they said, no, we're playing in it. And so that, sped up the process even more. And here we are. So and ironically, this is a bit of a tangent, but that's how our entire brand has grown, is people saying, I like what you're doing here. Now you need to do this for me here.
You're trying it. I mean, it's like trial and error. The one thing that kind of sticks out to me, especially when you were talking about sports, and we'll move on to the next thing soon, but so for a long time, you've been told, I even know it. I played, basketball when I was younger, ankle support. But now you're saying that there could be a time for no ankle support in NBA.
It's not. This is not my idea. Kobe said this.
Yeah.
So Kobe did a video that I have recorded somewhere in my computer. Organization is not my thing. I've always got to look it up every time.
Yeah.
I don't have it somewhere obvious. Anyway, he said, here's what a basketball shoe should be. And he basically described exactly what we made. But then Nike made something completely different. They just made a low top version of what they were already doing. So the word support is the key word. And think of it this way. If you support your arm, if you put your arm in a cast, does it come out weaker or stronger 8 weeks later?
Weaker.
Yeah. When you support a joint, all the muscles, ligaments, and tendons, all the tissue around that joint gets weaker because you're not letting it work. Well, guess what happens when you do that to your feet? Same thing. Guess what happens when you do that to your ankles? Same thing. So if you don't use it, you lose it. End of story. And the research bears that out. There's research showing if you put arch support in the shoes of healthy people who haven't been wearing arch support, their feet get up to 17% weaker in as little as 12 weeks. So that ain't good. There's research showing that if you just walk in a shoe like ours, a minimalist shoe, it builds foot strength as much as doing an exercise program. Again, it's use it or lose it. This is not rocket science.
So I'm guessing you're going to use a lot of this stuff to kind of be like the marketing push for the new product. Yeah, it's got to be.
Can you, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just had a quick question. So like, can you shine some light on like, in relation to what I'm seeing in the gym recently is a lot of people doing squats barefoot or with their socks on. Do you offer like a gym shoe of some sort?
Yes, we have. I mean, we've got here's the joke. We make a lot of shoes for kind of specific reasons, and then people use them for everything else you can think of. So the first closed toe shoe that we made came out in the October 2016. It was a casual canvas shoe, a little slip-on. And 2 weeks later, we're getting emails and videos from a guy. Hey, here I'm at the top of Kilimanjaro. I was like, what the? All right, whatever. So we have a shoe called the Forza Trainer. We have a shoe called the Prio Neo. I mean, we have like 5 or 6 shoes that people wear when they're working out. Yeah. And we're a partner of Lifetime Fitness. So if you go to Lifetime, you'll see a lot of the trainers wearing our shoes, a lot of the people wearing our shoes. And there's like 5 or 6 different shoes that they're wearing. It's kind of like we have 5 professional golfers that I know who love our shoes. They're each talking about a different shoe.
The one thing I definitely wanted to get into was you mentioned before you have a VC partner. Can we talk about the whole Shark Tank experience? Do you want to kind of open up about? So,
dude, I have no secrets, which is a problem.
Yeah. So, like, honestly, we've all seen you on the show. Yeah. I think people have probably seen that before. Obviously, they missed out, it seems like. I want to kind of get into, your experience going in, what it was like pitching to these sharks, and what happened after, and why they missed out.
Well, I'll start with the missed out part. CNBC has a YouTube channel that's Shark Tank Misses, or maybe it's just, and anyway, we're the #1 miss according to them. So first of all, just a correction. We have a private equity partner, not a VC partner, which is different in a way, but I do lump them into what I call the venture industrial complex. And we can talk about that if you want to. Okay, but the Shark Tank thing, well, backing up to the fact that I do stand-up comedy for a living, I thrive under high-pressure situations like that.
I was going to say it has to have a connection.
Oh, it's my favorite thing. I mean, Lena, my wife, we walked out and she's like really nervous, and I'm like dragging her with me to go, get into the tank because I'm like raring to go. This is going to be fun. Yeah. And it was, well, when you watch the show, it looks like a conversation about business. It is nothing like that. First of all, it's really a television show loosely about business. So it's about entertainment first and foremost. And I'm not saying this is a criticism. It's like, this is the thing we realized within 2 seconds of being in the tank. Like, this is
they're not showing the ones where they don't argue back and forth with people.
Well, the biggest thing is that, how do I want to say it? In the real business world, things are very different. You don't walk in telling someone what the valuation of your company is. You tell them what you're looking for money-wise, and they will tell you what the valuation is, and you agree or not. Yeah. So the fact, just the whole artifice of that, of like, here's what I'm offering and here's what I'm asking, that's a very different thing to begin with.
So there was no conversation, there was no communication.
Oh, no.
Before?
Not with the sharks. So in the audition process and getting on the show, you have to, in fact, you need to tell them what you're asking and what you're offering. And you're not allowed to, I can't remember what it is. You're not allowed to change that once you tell the show, here's what we're going to do. And the sharks can't offer you less money than you're asking for, but they have the ability, as you can see, to ask for more of a percentage of the company in exchange.
More money, yeah.
Or, some other way of getting more money, or less money for them, frankly. So that's the thing that you can change. And so the sharks have no idea who you are or what you're doing, except when the people in the show are setting up, the little display you have, they get a hint. And it's either a small hint or a big hint, depending on the display. So you walk out, and what happens after they tell you that they want you on the show, you work with a team of 2 producers, and the biggest thing that they work with you on is that first 60 seconds. That, like, hey sharks, and everything that follows after that. And we worked on that. In the month prior to being on the show, I don't think my wife and I said a word to each other that wasn't our pitch. We just kept saying it over and over and over and over. Literally, I have memories of being in a car and we just kept saying it, like the entire drive to God knows wherever we were going.
Yeah, got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, we were insufferable. So you get on the show, and again, it looks like a conversation, but it's not. I mean, even in our little opening 60 seconds, I got like one sentence in and Robert interrupted us. And it's like, oh, okay. And then I kind of regrouped and away we went. So what'll happen is one of the sharks will ask you like 5 questions in a row. And when you're on question 3, one of the other sharks will ask you 10 questions. And if you switch to the second shark, the first one gets mad. And if you don't switch, the first one gets mad. Yeah. So they're not paying as much attention to you as it looks like. They're making a lot of notes. They're doing some math. They're figuring things out, whatever they're doing. I mean, there's a lot of times where they're not paying attention. I did this one. What was the joke? The producers wanted me to tell this part of our story, which is, I became faster. I'm an all-American sprinter. And in fact, for men over, at that time, 45 or whatever I was then, I said, for whatever age I was, for men over that age, it seems likely that I'm the fastest Jew in the world. And dead silence. And then Cuban goes, wait, what'd you just say? And I realized, and I said it again, and he chuckled. And I realized I can't try and be funny. I can't do jokes because they're not paying attention. And the last thing you want is for them to edit it. You do a joke and then they cut to the sharks going, huh? So it's like, chill out.
Oh, wait, did they cut that out?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I would have noticed it. Yeah. Definitely.
Totally cut that out.
In my head, I go, I don't remember that. Yeah.
No, we were in there for like 40, 45 minutes. It cut down to, 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the other thing that's weird, you're unnaturally far away from them. Which
I noticed that.
Yeah. And the other thing that's weird, though, is if you've been watching the show, and we watched every episode in reruns, we watched every episode of Dragon's Den from Canada, every episode of Dragon's Den from the UK, we read all their autobiographies, they don't know who you are. And because you've been watching them, you have this false sense of familiarity, which is dangerous, because if you act like they're your friends because you feel like you know them, you will invariably say something totally stupid that you would never say to an investor otherwise.
Be likely to, give off more equity for some. Yeah.
Well, just, you'll reveal something incorrectly, or biggest thing, don't call Mark Cuban cubes.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Just about to say it. Yeah, cubes.
But as entrepreneurs, cubes, let me jump in there.
Cubes? Just for calling me cubes, I'm out.
That's funny. I've never heard.
It was crazy. This guy pointed at Mark Cuban and said something like, I ain't mad at you, cubes, or something like that. And it was so bad. It turned him off.
Did not handle that well at all. So, you have to walk in there and you got to be serious, and you got to know your shit. I mean, we not only did we only say our pitch to each other for a month, but we brought in all of our friends who were very smart business people and had them pretend to be the sharks, and they grilled us. And we went over our numbers, 900 times just to make sure we had them etched in our brain. And the way we even came to our offer and our ask was we approached people who had bought shoe companies, who had sold shoe companies, who had invested in shoe companies, bankers, investment bankers, buyers, like everyone we could think of. And we had a range that went from like $2.5 million to $10 million for a valuation. So we had to come up with a number that felt like we could justify it, but also gave them room to negotiate and bid us down. Yeah, so that's how we came to our ask and offer.
I was going to say, if I remember right, it was $400,000 for 20%?
No, for 8%.
8%. That's what it was. 8%.
Yeah. I think we had just done $600,000 the year before. So a $5 million valuation sounds crazy, except that in the footwear world, the way valuations work is very different than in the real world. Footwear valuations tend to be some multiple of either your trailing revenue or projected revenue for some point in the future that you can justify. And so we knew that we could justify, 5 was a little stretch, but we knew we could justify anywhere between 2.5 and 3.5. And so if they got to that number, we'd be cool with that. So we knew our yes and we knew our no. And that made it very easy. In fact, Kevin made his offer, and it was such a non-starter because he offered $400,000 for half the company. It's like, it was such a non-starter. We literally forgot he even made the offer. And here's a behind-the-scenes thing. So, in fact, at one point, Robert says, there's an offer on the table. And we're like, what? Oh, that? Oh, yeah, no. So my wife, I don't remember if this is in the show. My wife asked Kevin, so are you bringing anything to the table other than money? And he says, well, I'm a smart businessman. I got a good Rolodex. And here's where Lena and I disagree. I remember vividly her responding to that saying, so nothing, which, it's not really valuable to us as a footwear brand that you know nothing about footwear, and I don't know what your Rolodex is. And then Kevin said something like, you can counter. And so I bumped it up by 20%. I went from 8% to 10%. And he said, something like, you're crazy. And I said, maybe. All entrepreneurs are to a certain extent, but I'm not going to argue. This is the biggest thing we did. Here's another kind of inside thing. I am uninsultable. So you can say whatever horrible thing you can think of about me. And if it's totally not true, then what's the big deal? You can, call me, I don't know, whatever. And if it's not true, so be it. If it's metaphorically true, or if it's something that I've thought and hoped that no one ever heard, why am I going to argue with you? If you tell me I'm crazy and I've ever thought, yeah, maybe I'm crazy, then why would I argue? I'm going to just tell you the truth. Could be. We'll find out. I don't know. I think so. I think that too sometimes. That's the truth. So I've never had anyone insult me in a way where I couldn't say, oh yeah, I think that sometimes, or I think it worse sometimes. And I, just try to hide it, but it hasn't worked. If you have any suggestions, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
So every objection they had, we didn't resist, we didn't fight, we just hit it out of the park because we knew our numbers and we knew what we were doing. And at one point, Robert says at one point, what do you think about those, toe shoes? And I said, oh, they're just creating a wave of awareness and we're surfing on that wave. And he jumps out of his chair and yells at us, you people have a perfect answer to every question. And Lane and I looked at him kind of incredulously. It's like, it's our business.
Yeah. Good.
Was that on the show? Was that cut out?
No, that was cut out too.
There was a couple in pretty intense parts on the show as far as I remember.
Yeah. Like what?
I don't remember.
I remember Barbara going, you remind me of my ex-husband.
Or something like that. Yeah. I just remember them grilling you about certain things. But one thing I did notice was that you, like you said, you never really let it bother you. You always had something to come back. And I guess that does come from your past and stand-up comedy.
You're right. Well, two things. First of all, Barbara, her opening line, I hated you from the moment you walked out here. You remind me of my ex-husband. And I burst into hysterics.
I don't know how I would react to that.
I watched that. I was kind of like, that's unfair based on how he looks.
I'll tell you. First of all, I laughed because I thought it was funny. Secondly, from my don't try to say something funny or glib, I didn't say what was in my head, which was, oh, the guy who gave you the money that you used to start the business that you sold for $60 million, I'm cool with that. I didn't say that.
The guys would have been jumping on you.
They would have jumped down my throat. What I did also say, the night the show aired, I tweeted Barbara, I said, it's too bad you didn't invest. I could have used some of that money for plastic surgery. But I just cracked up and she just kept going. She just did not stop. And then she went.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, she goes after Lena and it's like, how could you be married to him? What's wrong with you that you're willing to put up with him? And Lena was like, yeah. She said, I was ready to defend my numbers, my margin, my EBITDA, but not my marriage.
I know, it's interesting. Well, that's why they kept it in the show.
It was great television. It was great television, no question. In fact, I thought they were going to open with that. But to your point, though, because from having done stand-up, I think faster than the average bear is the best way I can put it. And we all do if we're in that job. And it was a problem. That's why, Robert yelled at us is we literally had a good response for everything that they objected to because, we're quick. And I think Barbara in particular really didn't like that. There was something, because she's pretty fast herself and just didn't like that, we were just on it every time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I wanted to kind of lead this too. So you were obviously on the show. You had a pretty big appearance there. How did it affect your business after you were on the show?
The week following the show, we did about 3 months worth of sales. And now
Wow.
the fun part, just to talk about the growth of the business, that 3 months worth of sales is now what we do in about a day and a half. So slightly different now.
So, okay. So yeah, go.
Well, but the other thing it did, it just gave us a whole bunch of credibility. And to this day, still continues to do so, because people will watch it and see us and they get a sense of who we are, kind of independent of any conversation we'd have directly with them. So that's been really, really helpful. But there's one other thing that was a big deal. It's actually two. The first is that prior to getting on the show, we thought of this as just a lifestyle business. Maybe it'll make a car payment and a house payment, no big deal. I mean, we saw that we were changing people's lives. That was a good thing. But we thought, this is going to be something smaller. And we hadn't really decided what we wanted to do, or how committed we were. And preparing to be on the show is what really made us realize the value of what we had and the importance of what we were doing, and gave us the whatever it was to really be committed to following this through as much as we could. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that it just, the focus that it gave us was a really big deal. The second thing is that we keep, oh boy, how do I want to describe this? It allowed us to, like I said, be seen by other people in this other context, which has been really, really helpful. And they kept doing reruns. I mean, CNBC would show it a couple times a year. So, it's the gift that keeps on giving. And that was it. The other one is the Sharks had a bunch of complaints and criticism. Again, all we had then was a do-it-yourself sandal making kit. And so it was inspired by them that first we went, all right, how do we come up with a ready-to-wear version of this product, which I came up with and have a patent on. And then where do we want to go from here? How are we going to listen to our customers and follow what they're telling us to do? So the entire growth of the business in many ways was sparked by being on the show and the both negative and positive responses we got from the Sharks. So, we're forever in their debt.
Awesome. So obviously from pretty much 0 to 60 million annually, what is like a big thing that you guys did, if it was like marketing or if it was a business decision, whatever it may be, that really kind of took it to the next level? Maybe you were at like 6 million, 10 million, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden, you know what I mean?
No, it wasn't like that. It was really just kind of continual growth. It was just, kind of continual acceleration.
Well, how'd you keep that up?
Because most of it is not our responsibility. The number one thing that drives our sales is word of mouth. Is people put on our shoes, they feel the wide or foot-shaped toe box, or their toes aren't squeezed together, and it's like, oh my God, their posture isn't messed up by having a big heel. They can feel the ground in the right way, so there's just the right amount of protection. It allows them to feel the ground. So the experience is really profound.
So in other words, again, experience and education on the product.
It doesn't need a whole lot of education, frankly. I mean, in the early days, the early adopters were hip to this. There was a book that came out called Born to Run back in 2009. It got very, very popular, and it really talked about this whole natural movement idea. In fact, the author, Chris McDougall, whenever he did a book signing in those first 2 years, we saw a lift in sales. So
That's cool.
The product kind of sells itself to a certain extent. And half of our orders come from existing customers. So once people get used to the natural movement thing, not squeezing your toes together, not messing with your posture, being able to feel things, being able to move, having something lightweight, they just want more and more. Again, all of the expansion of the product line was customers telling us, here's what we want next. So the combination of people having these life-changing experiences, either from comfort or issues that they had for years that have gone away. Again, I can't promise anything medical, but we hear it all the time. Read our 80,000 plus 5-star reviews, and you'll hear story after story after story. So those two things are what really grew it. And I've been an internet marketer since 1992. So I know how to not only do that, but also, vet people who are trying to approach me with opportunities to do some sort of marketing initiative. The biggest thing is people trying to sell you on a marketing idea. They're going to tell you how great it is and how much money you're going to make. And my answer is, that's cool. We have no way of knowing what's going to happen. So how quickly and cheaply can I find out if either one of us have our heads up our butts supposed to you?
That's how we first started talking. Yeah,
right.
I remember.
I say it to everyone. I say it all the time. Because the only thing I can manage and mitigate is risk. The upside, who the hell knows?
Yeah.
I don't care if you've been batting 1,000 up until the time you talk to me. We might be the one time you strike out. And I have to assume that's the case. So I have this weird thing where I am inherently optimistic, but, what's the line? Something about trust everyone and tie your camel to the pole. That kind of thing. It's like I'm very trusting, but I also have been doing it long enough that I can see through a lot of the sales pitch nonsense. And that's a whole other skill set that you develop over time.
So we kind of talked about the stand-up comedy. You were a professional sprinter. So you keep talking about a
professional stand-up comic. I'm an amateur sprinter.
Okay, all right. So you keep mentioning you have a lot of experience with digital marketing and that sort of stuff. Is there a past, job that you were doing or an occupation? Like, where did that come from?
Oh yeah. So while I was doing stand-up, I had a lot of free time. And one of the guys that I met doing stand-up was applying to Columbia University Film School. And that seemed like a good combo of the things I was interested in. So I applied and got in. And while I was in film school, the software that you use for writing screenplays was really awkward and weird. Screenplays have this bizarro set of formatting rules and pagination rules that was very difficult to do properly. And from my background in cognitive psychology, I figured out a way to do it better. And I ended up architecting. I can't write a line of code. I architected a piece of software and then found some programmers who could make it happen. So I invented what became the industry standard word processing software for film and television writers in 1992. And that's when the internet was just starting to become a thing. Barely, frankly. So I just figured out how I was going to sell on the internet. And I got good at doing that and ended up meeting a couple of guys in 1992, 1993, who were some of the first internet marketers, like full-time internet marketers. And we really hit it off. I figured out how to do SEO before almost anybody else. There were a few of us who figured it out. And back then it was easy. You keyword stuffed a whole bunch of text in tiny little print at the bottom of a page, white text with a white.
Yeah.
And just lather, rinse, and repeat. And then you post a few.
Bad.
Well, at that time, no one did anything.
I know, yeah. Back in the day.
Yeah. I was just experimenting at first, just because I was curious about how this worked. And for a while, anyone who had an infomercial on TV, I outranked them for their name. I outranked Tony Robbins for his name. Wow. There was no way to make money on it at the time. But when I had the software company, it's like, so I started doing that. And so that's part of it.
Do you remember when Google Universal Search came out and you could literally get a video to rank overnight? Do you remember that? Crazy.
Well, there was a whole bunch of things here. For people who've been doing it for a while, there was a time where if you created a Squidoo lens, it would rank number one almost instantly. Yep. There was a time where you put up a Wikipedia page, it would rank instantly. The video thing was fun because actually prior to starting Xero, I had started a search engine marketing business based on video. And what I did as a demonstration of how this would work is in fact, after I built the website and my wife growled at me in the morning, I said, it'll be a good case study for our search engine marketing biz. It'll take maybe 3 months until I own all the keywords I care about. And I was completely wrong. It took me 6 weeks. And for a while, I had at least 35 and usually more than 40 of the top 50 search results for every keyword I cared about, because there was videos that were posted on, at that point, there was like 20 different video platforms. YouTube hadn't taken off as the one. Yeah. And so between articles and videos, I just dominated for about 9 months.
Yeah. We made a how-to video for a window blind company out of Texas, and I'll never forget that. It just ranked on the first page and drove tons of traffic. Something boring like window blinds. How to install them. And then everyone's going on there looking at it. People who aren't handy, they want instructions, and it drove so much business.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, those early days were a blast. And here's the irony. Things haven't really changed much in that what gets you ranked is still the same thing. Good content people like and some backlinks to it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Where do you see Xero Shoes going in the next, let's say, 5 years? Yeah. Where would you like to see things go?
Well, I'll say it this way. When we were talking to the private equity company that we currently have as a minority partner, one of the people who's an advisor to them has a lot of experience in the footwear world, and he invested parallel to them because he wanted to send a message to the market that, he believes in this and he's investing personally. And he asked me, do you see this becoming $1 billion brand in 10 years? And I said, oh, God, no, 7. He's like, what? I said, well, I can tell you what'll happen or what would need to happen to make that happen. And it's all very logical. Will it happen in that time frame? Don't know. It could be faster, it could be slower. But the gist of it is really simple. A friend of mine said it best. You want to make $1 million? It's easy. Find a way to change people's lives and ask them for a little bit of money in exchange. And what we're hearing from customers is much bigger than changing lives a little bit. It's a lot of it. And so fundamentally, there's something going on right now that's really interesting. I've never seen it happening in all of my time studying and being a marketer, is that we have the grassroots thing that's happening where the business is growing from efforts of our own and from our customers. Again, the word of mouth, the repeat orders. The retail business is starting to take off. So we're having retailers come to us instead of us having to knock down the door and beg to get a test, which always did well, but they were always reticent and reluctant at first. So that's the stuff that we're doing. But the demand and usually what happens is when something is big enough kind of at the grassroots level, then the celebrities show up because they don't want to ruin their credibility by getting in too soon and having people go, hey, moron, that's stupid. They have to wait till, when they say I'm into it, everyone's like, hey, you're part of the family. Well, there's a version of that happening now that's new. The top-down thing is all these professional athletes who are realizing the importance of foot strength and foot health, who are getting hip to what we're doing, who are reaching out to us and saying, how can you help? We had a football player who called and said, you gave me 3 more years in my career. I was about to retire because I was having all these, hip and back problems. I started wearing your shoes off the field, and now I got 3 more years in my career. How can I help? And so that top-down thing, especially when basketball launches in the spring, it's already starting because we have players playing in our shoes. But when that becomes a bigger thing, the top-down and the bottom-up thing can meet in the middle and I think accelerate the growth of something faster than anything. So in short, what I expect over the next number of years is a much bigger adoption of our product, not just us, but the other people in this category in retail. So more people will bump into it as they're just going to REI, which we're already in, and other stores. Much more expansion internationally. We're doing very well in Europe. We're doing well in Asia. We're starting to get into South America. And just getting past the point where people think this is ridiculous and gets to the point where people think this is a viable option that maybe they should consider. And when it gets to that point, I think there's going to be kind of 2 inflection points. The, hey, this isn't crazy, I'll think about it, will be inflection point number 1. And then inflection point number 2 is once people then have that same experience that all of our customers currently have, it's going to just accelerate it even more.
I had a question. So I'm a big fan of the Nike Flyknit, the stretchy material, the cloth. I like it. Almost like the Yeezy. Which one of your shoes? Because I have wide feet. Because I want to try.
You know what? So here, make a recommendation to him and me, and I'll order them right now, and we'll try them out.
Okay.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I have the answer for you right away, but I do have to say, if you have wide feet, I'm amazed that you can get your feet in that Flyknit because that thing is snug as crap and pointy, has a super pointy toe box. The thing I say to people all the time, I go, look at the shape of your shoe. If it's pointy, which it is if you're not wearing a shoe like ours, I go, is that the shape of your foot? Because if it is, it's not supposed to be. And if it's not, what kind of problems might you feel at the end of the day when you have shoved a foot-shaped thing called your foot into a non-foot-shaped thing called that shoe? Now, that said, if you have a wider foot and you want to get that same similar feeling of that kind of snug thing around your midfoot where it's proper but not squeezing your toes together, it's a shoe called the Nexus Knit, Nexus Knit. It's one of our best sellers. We have a hard time keeping it in stock. It's a great athleisure shoe. I mean, literally, you can just walk around in it, and it looks like you've been at the gym. But like I mentioned, we're partners at Lifetime Fitness. The number 1 shoe that the trainers have asked for is that shoe for men or women.
Okay, so Nexus Knit. Nexus Knit men. I see it right here.
Yeah.
Those are when I put my foot in it, it's got that little bit of a stretch, the give. It's just
around the midfoot. So it's basically it's called an engineered mesh construction. So it's definitely has that give around your instep and your midfoot, so it holds you nice and snug. But all of our shoes have a wider foot-shaped toe box, so your toes can spread naturally, which is what they need to do for balance, agility, mobility, and even strength.
Yeah.
Just hit, where it says quantity, just keep hitting the up arrow. Yeah, just go to, once you get past 10 or 20, you won't even notice.
So the Nexus Knit, you're saying is the best
athletic lifestyle sneaker. Okay, actually, this is interesting. So I'm currently wearing Alo Yoga. It's a sweater. I have their pants. I wear their clothing. I'm a big fan of athleisure, and I see right here you have athletic lifestyle sneaker. Athleisure is making a big appearance right now. I mean, these brands are going from nothing. Alo, for an example, nothing to massive, noble. I mean, Lululemon. are you kind of getting into that with this shoe a little bit?
Well, we have kind of everything from one end of the spectrum to the other. So there are a number of shoes that you would call athleisure, the Nexus Knit being one of them. There's others I'd literally have to look behind
right behind you. What's that one behind you? It looks like a slip-on. What is that?
Which one? That one?
Yeah. What's that?
Well, there's two. One is called the Dylan. This one, that's the whitish one, is the Dylan. The one above it is the Aptos. Those are both slip-ons. So kind of like Vans, but they don't squeeze your toes together, and you can feel the ground. And move.
Can you hold the black one up to the screen? I just want to see how wide it is from the top view. Yeah, that looks really comfortable. What's that one called?
All of our shoes.
What's that called?
The Dylan.
The Dylan?
This one. The Dylan, well, there's the Aptos, APTOS,
okay.
and the Dylan slip-on. All of our shoes
Wow.
have this wider foot-shaped toe box. So this is, one of the number one things that causes problems is squeezing your toes together. I mean, if all you do is take your big toe and push it in towards your second toe, it means you can't use your arch properly, and it even cuts off circulation within your foot.
Wow.
Neither of those are good. So we're making things to actually work the way human feet work. Wider foot-shaped toe box, low to the ground for balance and agility, no elevated heel, no thing called toe spring, where it means you can't make the shoe flat, super, super flexible, really lightweight. If you want more or less barefoot feel or more protection, so like all of our shoes you can wear barefoot if you want, socks if you want. If you wear socks, the thinnest sock you can wear so that you can still feel things.
Yeah.
If you want more barefoot feel, you take out the insole or the sock liner. If you want more protection, you keep it. Yeah. There's actually one other thing we do. We use a rubber that we designed, and we decided to make something really durable. Instead of something, typically they say running shoes, they wear out in 300 to 500 miles. It's actually less than that. But we made a new rubber, and when we told the manufacturer the characteristics that we wanted, they said, but that's not how they make rubber outsoles for shoes. We went, yeah, no shit. That's why we want to do it this way. We want to keep things out of landfills for as long as possible.
Yeah,
our soles have a 5,000 mile sole warranty, which is inspired by our sandals being inspired by tire sandals that the Tarahumara Indians in Mexico wear.
Wow, that's amazing.
Our 5,000 miles.
Cool. So yeah, we're gonna order a couple pairs and we're gonna try them out because I'm genuinely curious.
Thank you.
One thing I wanted to ask: what is something you now would tell yourself way back when you first started Xero Shoes?
Get a government job with a pension.
I've heard that a couple of times. It's
still the only answer. Look, if we walk away from this with more money than we would ever know what to do with, an amount of money that most entrepreneurs and especially digital people, they fantasize about getting, which is, I will say, not unlikely. I mean, we've built, business is growing really well in a category that's important, et cetera, et cetera. I would still say to people, in many ways, this was a kind of a mistake. Only in that we have been working so hard for our 15-year anniversary is coming up in just a couple of days.
Oh, congrats.
And,
that's awesome.
We're taking our first vacation next week.
There you go. Good man. Yeah. Work.
Yeah. I mean,
That's
there's a couple things to it. One is just the demands of the job. And the other is I have a, psychological habit of just postponing enjoyment till God knows when.
There you go.
I'm learning to try and not do that. Part of what's made it happen is I've gotten older, In the early days, like from the time I was about 47 to maybe 55, I could work 7 days a week. Can't do it anymore. Now, that doesn't mean I'm, taking time off per se. It's like on the weekend, I just fall over sometimes, and I'm 3-hour nap on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. I always think I'm going to get work done on the weekend. Never happens.
Well, I mean, do you have anything you want to add or
I
any
have
more
one
questions?
last question because I like to sprint with my son. I'm just curious. So like we do it like once or twice a week. You got a sprinting shoe?
Yeah.
Ooh,
so again,
what's that one
dude,
called?
I'm a competitive sprinter. Of course I have a sprinting shoe.
Yeah, let's
now,
see.
I'm also working on another one. I'm working on something that's a better version of a spike. But the shoe that I developed this shoe with a guy who actually was at Nike for 30 years, trying to make Nike do things that work the way human feet work.
Yep.
And he says, there's 15 different things you need to do. They've done 1.5 of them and they won't do any more. I said, all that stuff that you wanted to do, I can do. So we developed a shoe called the Speed Force. This is actually Speed Force 2.
Ooh,
Speed Force. Like, this is what makes the Flash have his powers.
Wow. Okay.
So I've worn the shoe. I train in this shoe. This is the shoe I wear most often, and it's what I compete in. So it doesn't have spikes, just has one of our typical soles. It's the closest thing to barefoot that we make.
Yep.
And when I race in this, I'm no faster or slower than when I'm in spikes. So I know I can do something better. We're working on something that I think will be better. But for now, I mean, this is what I race in, and it's totally perfect.
That's awesome. So I'm going to check those out too. But my
backing up to people doing everything we make. This is also a shoe that's worn by a lot of powerlifters, because again, it's the closest thing to barefoot.
Yeah.
So to your point, people who are squatting barefoot, who are deadlifting barefoot. There's some people who will squat in squat shoes, and some of them need it. Most of them don't. In fact, the reason squat shoes were invented was really for Olympic lifters, because when you've got that bar over your head, you're kind of tipped forward, so you need your heels lifted up to keep you from falling on your butt, or it's pulling you backwards. So what's happening. But for most people, you don't need that. They go, oh, I don't have the ankle mobility. Well, you develop ankle mobility by using your ankles. So anyway, my favorite story, someone was trying on that shoe at a powerlifting meet, the Speed Force, and they call her name for the bench press. And she's like, oh my God, wait, I gotta go. And she just like runs off and then comes back a minute later going, I just had a 20-pound PR. And I felt like my feet were just like gripping into the ground and pushing me all the way through, because powerlifters know bench press starts with the feet. So it's so much fun to watch that happen. So if you're sprinting, that's what I sprint in. But if you want something a little less barefoot, the shoe to get would be probably the HFS.
That's the first one that popped up. Yep.
Yeah, which is just a great running shoe overall.
So what's the time on your 100-yard sprint?
13.2.
Okay.
Keep in mind, I'm 62 years old.
Yeah.
So, and frankly, I'm a better 60-meter runner than a 100-meter runner. So my indoor 60, my last time I ran, I think I ran an 8.5, which is okay.
So
it's an all-American time. That's all I care about.
So my dad is a big runner, and what I'm going to do is that he goes through shoes like crazy, Asics, all of them. Nexus knit. Would Nexus knit be a good fit for him? I'm going to have him run in them.
No. I mean, if he's going to run in it,
He runs like 12 miles a morning. He's crazy.
No, I'd go for, if he's a road runner, I'd go for the HFS.
HFS. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, if there's no more questions, I just, is there anything that you want to say to our listeners, anything before we close out
Just something inspiring related to entrepreneurship.
I'll say this. I'm trying to think. I got two thoughts. Thought number one is, when people ask us how we got here, and I'm not being glib when I say this, I say 90% of it is luck. And the other 10% is also luck. And then there's a separate 100% where it's 90% working your ass off, and 10% being smart enough to know how to put out the fire that started overnight, even though nothing changed since yesterday. It's a fire drill every day.
Yeah.
And so, and when I say luck, I mean literally from just the fact that Lena decided to A, not ignore me, and then B, become my friend, and then C, decide to go out with me, and then D, marry me. If those things hadn't happened, which started with a chance meeting that shouldn't have happened, then I wouldn't be here. She's a brilliant finance operations person. I'm a product marketing person. And when we got together, I was basically retired. So we never knew each other as working people. We never even talked about really doing the business. It's like it just kind of started. Well, I started it. And at one point when she realized it was real, she went, okay, I'm all in. So the luck there. But I mean, that's the beginning. There's something lucky that happens to us every day. Even times where if things go awry, that tends to lead to something that is very, very lucky that, pulls you out of that ditch and moves things forward. So don't underestimate the importance of luck. Don't underestimate what your competitors are doing, because if you're the leader in something, they're the ones who will see the holes in what you're doing and be able to exploit those holes. And they will be a little more nimble than you are. So you got to be attentive to that. But if you're just getting started, the only piece of advice I have is this. I mean, when I say get a government job with a pension, if that gives you any pause, you should get a government job with a pension. And if you're a real entrepreneur, there's nothing that I can say that will talk you out of your statistically stupid idea. And so what you need to do when you have one of those potentially stupid ideas is test it as quickly and cheaply as you can and find out if you have a case of cranial rectal reorientation syndrome. And the way you can test it, there are a couple. The simplest thing is you want to see if people that you've never met who don't know you will give you their hard-earned money. And then you have to try and figure out how many of them there are, and then divide that number by anywhere between 2 and 10. It will be fewer than you think, most likely. And the thing to do, I mean, in the old days, what direct response marketers would do is they'd write a full page ad, put it in a magazine. You had to clip a coupon and send in a check to get the product. And they would see how many checks they got to decide if they were even going to make the product. And if they didn't, maybe they'd try a different ad, or maybe they would just bail on the whole thing. You could do the same kind of thing now with AdWords. I mean, you could build a simple one-page website to just get people to opt in at the very least to find out more, or take them all the way through the sales process and then not take their money. And just run ads on AdWords or run ads on Facebook or do something and see if you can spend a few $100s to get people that you've never heard of to give you some money or commit to give you some money. And we all get enamored with our ideas. And I'm thinking of a very famous stock trader, and someone asked him how he made so much money. He said, the moment I get into a position, I pretend that I am someone else, and I look for every reason that decision I just made is wrong. I'm not trying to prove that I made a good decision with that investment. I'm trying to prove that I was an idiot.
Yeah.
As soon as I can find out where I was an idiot, I get out. And if I make more money, or if it could have made more money by staying in, I don't care, because I got out, because you just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So,
Awesome.
It's what we do all the time. Again, I am globally optimistic and I am locally annoyed. I have a big picture for the future, but today I've got to figure out how to make sure things are working and how to see through a sales pitch and figure out how to test what someone's selling me to see if it's going to work for us or not, because it might work for everybody else and not for us. So anyway, I don't know how that all puts together into something like that.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you again for taking some time to chat with us. We definitely got a lot out of it. I really enjoyed, chatting with you today.
Yeah.
Xero Shoes to 7 billion.
Away we go.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Real Business Roundtable. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please like, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Also check us out on Instagram for updates, clips, and more. Peace out. See you next time.